Training for a marathon is a journey in itself, but preparing correctly can help us build up to be the strongest that we've ever been before we've even started the training. What is up guys, Andy Forrest Team Runner here, and here are 6 tips to help you and me be at our strongest when we start the next marathon block. Welcome back to another video, and as I speak I'm currently in week 8 of a 12-week speed block, and that means I've got 4 weeks left until my attention turns to another marathon training block. It will be my 10th marathon training block. I'm excited, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there that are watching are thinking, or maybe have even started your marathon training already. So here are going to be 6 tips to help you and me be at our best, be at our strongest, and be the most ready that we can be to take on the next marathon training block. If you're excited for the video today guys, please give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. We'll kickstart with tip number 1. So tip number 1 is going to be all about establishing that base level of fitness. Why? Because obviously if we approach a marathon training block, as we all know, marathon training is quite intense. If we approach it with a minimal fitness or no fitness, or we go into it off the back of a non-running period or just a really low mileage period and we're looking to really ramp our mileage up, there are big dangers there of injuries and just general exhaustion if we're not ready and prepped and primed for what is about to come. If we're ready and we have that base level of fitness, a certain volume of running in our system, whether it's coming from somewhere like me who's going to be coming off the back of a speed block, or someone that's coming off the back of just some nice easy aerobic base miles, either way, as long as there's a good amount of volume there, our body is going to be at least half ready for what we're about to throw at it with those longer miles that are about to come. If we're coming, as I said, from literally no fitness or a very low mileage block and we really want to ramp it up, that's when injuries can occur. We just have to be a bit careful. There's nothing wrong with it. Loads of people do it. But with that approach, you really do want to consider a potential lack of intensity in the first few weeks just to allow your volume to increase up to your required level before then adding in any form of intensity. So it's just a difference in approach, but ideally what you want to have is some kind of base level fitness from whatever angle you're coming at it, of a decent amount of volume ready for what you're about to throw at your body. And number 2 is to get on top of those niggly injuries right now, before you even start. Now, if you've already started, this doesn't really apply to you, but for someone like me or someone that's starting in a week or 2, it really is going to be a key period of time to get on top of any niggly injuries or anything that's just causing any issues right now. Because ultimately, in my past experience and previous marathon training blocks, I know going into them with a niggle can often be the worst thing possible. Naturally, niggles can occur in any training block, but I do find in the shorter distance stuff, when I'm running slightly lower mileage or faster work or whatever it might be, if I'm not time on feet for like over 2 hours and my runs are slightly shorter, then niggles are easier to manage. But when you're out for those long runs and you're out for that long period of time, which we are maybe for a couple of times a week at least with marathon training, whether it's a long marathon pace session or it's a long run, whatever it is, we're going to be exacerbating those niggles even more. Going into that with those niggles is just, for me, speaking from experience, a recipe for disaster. Today, right now as I'm recording this, I've just come upstairs to my office from a sports massage, keeping on top of things. I don't have any niggles, but I'm aware that that is a dangerous place to be because you can feel really good and then suddenly it can all be derailed like that. Been there last Christmas, exactly the same. Calf went, felt invincible, and that was game over for me for 4 weeks. So just being aware of that, being aware that just because everything feels okay doesn't necessarily mean that everything is okay. The sports masseuse found a few knots, ironed them out, and I feel incredible. Knots that I didn't realize were there, but if I'd have left them and continued on them for another few weeks, who knows what could have happened. So yeah, get on top of those niggles now before you start that training. And tip number 3, here's 2 things to think about with this one. Tip number 3 is going to be all about making sure you've got a good cross training or strength work base fitness in there already. I say fitness, routine in there, present right now before you start. And if you do start, we'll talk about that very shortly. So what normally happens with me is I'm reactive, not proactive. This is the first marathon block that I'm going to be approaching where I've been proactive with strength training. Right now is week 8 of my current strength training routine, and from previous experience I've gone I'm marathon training, I need to strength train as well. And what happens is, not necessarily the intensity from the running, but the intensity from the strength training as well is a recipe for disaster in those first few weeks. Because what you're doing is you're just overloading your body. Not only are you increasing the miles and stuff, but the intensity and load you're putting on other areas of the body can often lead to too much too soon. It's just like increasing volume and intensity in your running at the same time. It's a recipe for disaster. Don't think that strength training is any different. Perfect example, this training block, I had a few niggles in the first 2 or 3 weeks as I started my strength journey and also increased the intensity in my running. Volume went down, but the added strength work I was doing in my body was meaning there was a lot of extra intensity being put on muscles in my body, and I wasn't liking it. I was getting a few niggles, a few pains and aches here and there, but that's ironed out and I now feel my body is ready to work in sync with the running and the strength training. Naturally, as runners, if you haven't started, we often go, marathon training, I must start strength work. I must be ready to handle all this mileage. And again, we're increasing the volume, potentially a bit of intensity as well, and then going to throw in some strength work. It is just sometimes just too much. So if you are looking to start marathon training and have that thought of, right, I need to do strength work as well, be gentle with it. Literally start with once a week and work up to twice a week. Don't think I should go 3 times a week straight away. It's just too much and your body will not thank you for it. If you just start with once a week for the first 3 or 4 weeks to get used to it, and then finish off the rest of the block with 2 weeks and increase your strength program, whatever you're doing, increase it as you go. That's a good way to kind of gently ease your body into it. Don't just go marathon training 3 times a week, strength work. It's going to be a recipe for disaster. And tip number 4 is going to be all about accountability. Have a training plan, have a coach. Do something to make you accountable for what you are about to embark on. Reason being, it's very easy to miss runs. Easy excuses pop up in our heads. Weather might be a bit bad, we might not fancy it, but if we have something on a plan, something that kind of gives us some kind of guide as to what we're aiming to do, it makes us a little bit more willing and a little bit more wanting to do a run and think to ourselves, do you know what? We know consistency is key. I've got an easy run today. Let's just get out there and do it, get it done. We're much more likely to go and do it if we have a coach or if we have a plan rather than nothing at all. I've been there, done it, and I found that my mileage has yo-yoed throughout marathon training without a plan, and it really isn't ideal. We want to be the strongest that we can be throughout this marathon training, not necessarily fastest, but just be as strong as possible. As I said before, consistency is key, and we're going to get to the start line feeling as good, fit and fresh as possible. Now, what you often find with this is I do say plans are great for most of the time. You do have to listen to your body. You do have to swap things around. You do have to talk to your coach. If you're not quite feeling it that week, do shift things around. If you're unwell, they're there for a guide. But I think what that guide does is it just gives us some kind of level, as I said, of accountability, and allows us to kind of set weekly goals and take us to the next goal each week as we go through. And tip number 5 is going to treat ourselves to some new shoes. A luxury, potentially, but right now, as I'm recording this, it's a great time of year, around Christmas time, and probably it will be in the summer as well. You'll find in the winter that the spring and summer range of new shoes are heavily discounted. In the summer, you'll find last season's shoes heavily discounted, ready for the autumn and winter releases coming up. Just great times of year to pick up some absolute bargains. You don't have to break the bank, but again, what I found, and my old mantra was, I'm just going to wear shoes into the ground until they hurt my shins. And when they hurt my shins, I knew I needed some new shoes, but often that can go too far the wrong way and take us down the path of injury. We don't want to get to that point. So don't start a marathon training block if you can, and financially, if you're in a position where you can invest 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds on a pair of shoes, grab them, because there are shoes out there at that price that are affordable, that are even this season's models that are heavily discounted, and discount codes flying around the internet. There are plenty of options there. Do check them out. They're everywhere. Sports shoes, Pro Direct, you name it, tons of websites where you can go and grab some bargains. You just find not only does it mentally give you a bit of a boost, but you know that, all right, you're going to be covered for your full marathon training block. More than likely, most pairs of shoes will at least last a marathon training block and beyond, and you'll know that you're in safe hands with the shoes that you've just bought. And the final tip is going to be to start practicing your fueling early. Don't just wait for the long runs. This is something that I've learned in the past and I'm really taking seriously in this training block. If you followed my London Marathon training series just gone now, you'll know that fueling was a massive issue for me especially hydration. Well, what I've been doing this winter already is practicing hydration on my runs, not even just my long runs, but some of my sessions and some of my easy runs, just getting my stomach ready for what is about to entail. I've had success, I've had failure, I've had stitches, I've had settled stomachs, but I'm starting to work out slowly what my stomach can handle, when it can handle it, and at what paces and intensities I find it too hard to take on fluid and where I feel it's okay. So this is all building up a good picture in my head so that when I start week 1, I'm already going to be practicing my fueling, and I'll know that come race day with another 12 weeks under my belt, I'll feel ready to rock and roll with what my fueling strategy is. I can't recommend it highly enough. I've done training blocks without fueling, I've done them with, and I personally would always recommend practicing with, just so you know there's no surprises on race day. You'll have a settled stomach, you'll be able to practice fueling in the morning with your breakfast, and then going out practicing your race fueling with your long run. So don't wait until the last few weeks of your training block. Do start practicing earlier than you think you need to. So there we go, those are my top 6 tips on how to be at your strongest, at your most readiest. Just be prepared for your next marathon training block. And I'd love to hear in the comments below what your preparation is like leading into your marathon training. What do you like to do in the weeks leading up to marathon training? Anything specific, or do you just roll straight into it and see how you go? One thing I really should have mentioned earlier, but I've completely forgotten, is Pure Sport products. They're products that I've used now for months. I am an ambassador. There are links in the description. There is a discount code, but it's something I just don't mention enough, and I just want to talk about these 2 products. We'll just tell you that this is freeze roll, this is water based. I roll it all over my legs, calves, hamstrings and quads. It is like a roll-on deodorant. You roll it all over, absorbs into your muscles, gets them primed and ready to run. Ideal for me who gets up super early and is up and out the door within half an hour most mornings. It just helps the muscles kind of absorb, fire up and get ready for the runs. It's like deep heat but way better. And then the muscle balm is something I put on with this tool here after my sessions only and my long runs, and I just iron the balm into the legs, iron out the muscle fibers, and it has just kept my legs feeling so good for so many months now. So I just wanted to mention that. Anything else you guys can think of, do drop comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to hear if you feel this video has helped you, and if it has, please do give it a like. I'll also leave a couple of videos right here, here and here for useful marathon training tips, and I hope they help you as well. Fingers crossed, I'll see you over on one of those. If you enjoyed today's video, guys, please do give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, I'll see you on the next one. Until then.